In the mid-1990s, the small town of Baraboo, Wisconsin was a mostly quiet and peaceful community. Situated in Sauk County, the town is located near the Devil's Lake State Park, a well-known camping spot that attracts upwards of 3 million people per year. Another well-known area in Baraboo is the Baraboo Hills. The Baraboo Hills were named one of the last great places in the world in the 1970s. It is on a list of one in only 77 such places. The town of Baraboo is also famous because it's actually the hometown of the Ringling Brothers. In 1884, their now famous circus was formed right here. Though it shut down in 2017, the circus achieved massive success and became a staple of entertainment for almost 100 years. But of course, there is also some very dark history that comes out of Baraboo. One of the most bizarre yet terrifying cases took place here in the 1990s that shocked its residents to their core. The story starts in the year 1994 when a 14-year-old boy named Christian Steiner disappeared from his home in Baraboo. Authorities speculated that he was kidnapped as he wasn't the type to just run away from home. Major indications that he was kidnapped included the fact that the screen on his bedroom window had been sliced open, as well as the discovery of muddy footprints found on the carpet in his bedroom. Despite authorities' best efforts to find Chris alive, 6 days after his parents reported him missing, on July 10, 1994, Chris's dead body was found caught on a tree along a sandbar on the edge of the Wisconsin River. An autopsy was performed, but the results attributed the cause of his death to drowning. His body was bloated from being in the water, so no x-rays were taken, and there was key information that was unfortunately overlooked that would have proven that this was not an accidental occurrence. Still, they were unable to determine whether or not his death was an accident or intentional, so there wasn't really any further investigation on the case, and it was left marked as undetermined. One year later, on the night of June 29, 1995, 13-year-old Thad Phillips was fast asleep on the couch in the home that he and his family had just recently moved into in Baraboo, when he was suddenly awakened to the sensation of someone picking him up off the couch. Still half asleep, he assumed that one of his parents was taking him to bed. Unfortunately, this was not the case. He began to come to when he realized he was no longer in his house. He opened his eyes and could see the stars from the night sky overhead before he turned his attention to the stranger carrying him. His abductor was an older teenage boy who he did not recognize. Thad was still disoriented, so he complied without question when the mysterious boy asked him in a friendly voice if he could run with him. The two boys ran until they made it to a house not far from his. Once inside, Thad looked around, noticing the house was in very poor shape. He recalls trash and old food littering the home, which made him, for the first time that night, feel uneasy about the situation. The mysterious boy introduced himself as Joe before stating that he was throwing a party soon and that many people, some of whom were people Thad knew from school, would be coming by, and that it'd be a good time. Next, Joe asked Thad if in the meantime he wanted to head upstairs and check out some model cars and trucks before the other boys arrived, to which Thad agreed, not thinking anything was wrong. This was the beginning of a horrible, real-life nightmare of pure agony and suffering for the 13-year-old boy. While looking at model cars, Thad recalls a sudden change that occurred within Joe. Seemingly out of nowhere, Joe completely freaked out and threw Thad onto the bed, landing on his back. Without any time to react, Thad watched helplessly as Joe grabbed a hold of his right foot and began to twist violently. His foot was twisted until it snapped loudly, which made Joe stop. He sat down on the bed next to Thad before putting his head in his hands while breathing heavily. Thad took this moment as an opportunity to run out of the room. He claims that he didn't feel any pain in his ankle at the time, although it was broken, but he could feel the sensation of his bones scraping together as he ran on his foot. He made it all the way down the stairs, through the living room, and into the kitchen when Joe caught up with him. Joe quickly and aggressively grabbed Thad and put him in a chokehold before throwing him onto the couch. He then grabbed Thad's right leg, forced it up over his head, and applied intense pressure, causing the bone in his thigh to snap. Immediately after, Joe's demeanor completely changed back to the friendly persona that he initially had with Thad. He almost seemed as if he was a friend, wanting to hang out and have a conversation. He told Thad about his family and that he lived in the home with his brother. Thad said that he wanted to keep the conversations going so that Joe wouldn't attack him again. He then asked Joe why he was doing this, to which Joe responded that he had a fascination with breaking bones, specifically the sound it made. Thad then asked him why he didn't just break his own bones, but Joe claimed he couldn't get the angles right to do it to himself. This led to Thad asking Joe if he had ever done anything like this before to someone else. Joe bragged that he had in fact done it to someone else, a boy named Chris. The following morning, Thad asked Joe if he could call his parents, and Joe agreed to allow him to do so. He handed Thad the phone, but to Thad's dismay, the phone was disconnected. Joe laughed it off as a joke. He seemed to enjoy playing with Thad's emotions. They spent most of the day watching TV together in the living room. Joe seemed content and friendly towards Thad, so Thad tried to reason with him, asking him if he'd let him go. He told him that he'd tell people that he tripped over a coffee table, and that's how he sustained those injuries. But Joe refused, telling him that no one would believe him. After several hours, Joe grabbed Thad and took him back upstairs. He threw him on the bed, and this time grabbed his left foot before twisting it until it snapped. Thad remembers him twisting more and more until the skin resembled a twisted rubber band and his foot was backwards. Thad tried to fight back, hitting Joe in the face and head, which only further aggravated him. He told Thad to hold a pillow over his own face and to not move, threatening that if he didn't comply, he'd break his neck or his back. Thad believed him and did what Joe said. After breaking both ankles and his right thigh bone, Joe put leg braces on Thad and forced him to walk. At one point, Thad remembers standing on a board over the stairs. He doesn't remember if Joe kicked the board out from under him or if it came loose on its own, but it caused him, with all his injuries, to fall all the way down the flight of stairs. He then began to notice how severe the swelling had started to become in his legs. He says one of his ankles was about as large as a softball, and his thigh was as large as a basketball. All of the affected areas were extremely black and blue, and he was in agonizing pain. Later that night, Joe left Thad upstairs in his room and left the house. He exited through the front door and his car was heard driving away. Thad took this as an opportunity to escape from this horrible situation. He crawled off of the bed and dragged himself to the stairs. In a desperate attempt, with no use in his legs, he threw himself headfirst down the flight of stairs, but passed out from the extreme pain at the bottom. He woke up and attempted to crawl through the living room, but passed out many more times on his way to the kitchen. He didn't make it before Joe returned home. Joe entered the living room and, to his surprise, found Thad laying on the floor. He became angry and dragged Thad back up to the bedroom. When he got him back on the bed, Joe began twisting both of Thad's severely swollen, broken ankles again, further damaging the tissue. He then began to jump on Thad's chest, breaking several ribs in the process. After he was done, he put many layers of socks on Thad's feet, covering his damaged ankles, before returning back to the friendly version of himself. He dragged Thad back downstairs, where they watched some movies, before both fell asleep. When Thad woke up the following morning, he looked down at his legs, and they looked even worse. He says that they didn't even look like human legs anymore, and that they had swollen up even bigger and were starting to turn yellow. The pain was excruciating. He remembers Joe being very interested in wanting to inflict more pain on him every couple of hours. He laid him on his stomach and was jumping on his back with his knees over and over again. He also twisted his left knee completely backwards, breaking it, further mangling Thad's legs. That night, Joe was leaving again, but this time he decided to lock Thad in the closet in his bedroom to further prevent him from trying to escape again. After Thad heard the car drive away, he felt around in the dark and found a heavy wooden guitar. He grabbed the guitar and beat the door open with it before crawling out. He reached the stairs and threw himself down yet again before passing out at the bottom. When he regained consciousness, he was actually able to crawl all the way through the living room and into the kitchen, where he found the phone hanging on the wall. He grabbed the cord and jiggled it free before he dialed 911. He told them Joe's first name, as well as approximately where he believed he was located, and they knew right where to find him. When the police entered the home, they found Thad laying on the floor. His left knee was completely backwards and his feet were turned sideways. The officers were in utter shock seeing the condition he was in. They got him in an ambulance and he was immediately taken to the hospital, where he was told that he would have likely died from internal bleeding if he had stayed there even 2 hours longer. With the severe damage to his legs, he required many surgeries to regain his mobility.